Welcome to Women of Worth Wednesday on High Five Live. We are actually not live today for a number of reasons. When we went live at 11 o'clock a.m. Utah time, all of Facebook and Instagram went down. And we tried 3 different times not realizing that's what was going on. But now that we know that we have some opposition, we are empowered. What did we do in the movie? Fight for Zion, right? So we are now actually Fight for Israel.
Hurrah for Israel.
Hurrah for Israel. So we are actually videotaping this, and we will be uploading this interview later. Because we were in the Grobergs' home, and so we did not want to miss this opportunity to have a conversation with them. I'm so grateful for their patience and their spirit and their sense of humor with the behind the scenes of what's been going on. And I'm GANEL-LYN with the Women of Worth Wednesday show here on the High Five Live page. Welcome to the Grobergs and to all of you on the High Five Live page. We are here
Welcome to all of you.
to have a conversation about this wonderful new movie that I just had the opportunity to see on Monday night, The Other Side of Heaven 2. I hope you can see the banner behind us. If you are one of the 2 people on the planet that did not see the first of the Other Side of Heaven movie with Anne Hathaway, then I hope you'll run out and rent it or buy it on Amazon. I think there's lots of ways you can get it. It's a wonderful story, and it was a very important movie to come out, I think, when it did. It reached a large audience because of who produced the movie, and I think we were joking that I grew up in California where I was kind of the token member of the church in my community. And beyond the Osmonds, no one really had an understanding of missionary work and some of the cultural things of being a member of the church. And that movie came out, and it really kind of opened up conversations about what you send your children off to the other side of the world and you pay your own way. That's the question we often got as a missionary family. For those that are familiar with my life and my story, my son just returned from Zimbabwe, and it was such a gift for us as a family, but we had email, and we could communicate with him on a very regular basis and know quickly what he needed prayers for and what he was struggling with. We couldn't do anything about it most of the time, except pray and fast even more. But if you've watched The Other Side of Heaven, you know that a lot of what happened for the Grobergs was very delayed. They had to wait to receive and share information about what was happening in Elder Groberg. You kept it to yourself, how hard it was. And Jean was back at home, and it was a beautiful love story. And I'm so grateful that you were willing all those years ago to open up yourself to this very public forum. What made you decide that it was time to do it again? Was the first time so wonderful that you thought, oh, we're just asking for a lick and we might as well do it again? Actually, I do know the answer to this question a little bit.
Well, actually, what really happened, what started the whole thing was after President Monson, then Elder Monson, when I was mission president in Tony in 1966, he was the youngest member of the Quorum of the 12.
Yeah,
he got assigned way down.
He was in his 30s, right, when he was called.
Yeah. And so he was our supervisor. Then when I was called as a general authority some years later, he approached me one day and said, John, I want you to write a book about your mission experiences. Because if you don't, that'll be a chapter of church history and world history that's lost, because we don't do things like that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I did. When I handed him the manuscript, and as you know, he was a fast reader.
He was a fast reader.
And he, just a couple of days later, he called me back to his office and said, it's great, I love it. There's only one problem. What's that? You don't say anything about when you're a mission president. I said, well, you said to write about a mission, and he said, you don't consider being a mission president a mission? And I said, sorry, I misunderstood. And he said, you know, he was good-natured. He says, well, I'm sorry, I maybe didn't make it clear, but I'll give you 2 more years. You got to write another book about when you were a mission president with your family. So I did. And those are the first 2 books. I've written 5 books altogether, but those 2 are the ones the movies are based on. So the first one was The Other Side of Heaven, and then it took quite a few years. And President Monson was very much supportive, very supportive. And he kept asking me, when are you going to do the second one? I didn't really feel like it was an assignment, but it was an encouragement, and kind of things worked out, so the second one came. But that's how, it wasn't something that we decided to do. It was something that we kind of felt we should do.
And did you feel that it was a great missionary opportunity when the first movie did so well and opened up conversations about missionary work in general?
Oh, yeah.
Was it a good experience and you were hesitant to do it again? or was it not a good experience and you were hesitant to do it again?
Well, I can have Jean tell some of the
Okay.
others, but the first movie resulted in so many, I mean, literally, not only hundreds, thousands of people saying that's what influenced them to go on a mission or even to join
Right.
the church. And Jean, you can give some examples,
Well,
I'm sure.
I think that just overall that the fact that it was blessing people's lives helped me to realize that the Lord had given us those experiences, not just for us to keep to ourselves,
Right.
but
To
they're
share.
lessons of
Yeah.
faith and the goodness of faithful people.
And to
how-
and to keep them under a bushel, that's the light, right? And it's one of the reasons I do the work that I do, and I know that when you know why you're sharing it and you hear from even one person that is
Yeah.
touched, but when you hear from thousands, I was so touched by this movie because it made me laugh, it made me cry, it inspired me, it shook me in some ways. But I'm going to just say, full disclosure, President Monson is a distant cousin of our family. His mom's a Condi, and I didn't expect to see him in the movie so much. And so I was crying for lots of reasons, but the actor that depicts President Monson is just delightful and really captures that humor you were just talking about, and his mannerisms and his spirit. And I love, first off, right at the beginning of the movie is this moment where you have this young family and you're called to go serve with this young family, and there's this discussion of like, really, is this the wisest thing to be bringing young kids and living on this island and doing this mission? And President Monson, without giving too much away, is like, yeah, it's not a great idea, and it's a great idea, basically, right?
Yes.
And I think I left the movie just praying specifically for your family, for all the sacrifice and the example of the reminder to me that all the good things in life have sacrifice as part of that. What are your thoughts on sacrifice and service?
Well, I think sacrifice brings forth the blessings of heaven. And I'm like you. I think that actor just nailed it. And I just wouldn't have felt good about having a movie without President Monson in, because he was such a big part of our mission. He not only spent days, he spent weeks at times, when the transportation wasn't all that good even back then.
Yeah, you had to commit
This is
if you
50,
wanted to
60
go
years,
somewhere, right?
yeah.
You were going to be there
Yeah.
for a while.
And so, but sacrifice, a lot of people think of sacrifice as a negative thing, but really it's a positive thing. That's what allows you to grow, and while you don't look forward to it, you
Right.
don't try to find it, you just do what the Lord wants you to do, and boy, it ends up being a lot of
blessing,
trials,
yeah.
but it always ends up as a blessing, and I feel personally that President Monson is happy with this movie too.
I'm going to tell you, I felt that as well. I felt like as I cried and missed him as, this cousin Tommy that
Right.
I had Thanksgiving dinner with, and I just thought this is a fulfillment of what he hoped to have
Right.
in encouraging you to write more, to
Right.
share more.
Right.
Because the perspective of a young missionary, we don't always get the inside. I don't know if we've had a movie or a public depiction of what it takes to be mission president in a family, and the sacrifice of a spouse and children to go and serve a mission as a family is unless you've had the experience, you don't know what that takes. And your kids were young, but I love the conversation you have with your daughter about, wait, Dad, you keep saying everything ends with a happy ending, but how is it happy? I had to say goodbye to my friends in Idaho Falls and come here. And I love the idea of how you showed us how enduring to the end looks. It's not the end, so we don't know if it's a happy ending yet, right?
That's right. Well, and I hope that people understand the great sacrifice that this dear woman made.
Yeah. The movie only shows, right?
Well, and it doesn't show all the fun, happy adventures too, as well as the
You're sweet.
trying times.
Yeah.
But, it was a great adventure. Of course, I gained a great love for the Tongan people and all the Polynesian people as during those 3 years of writing Dear John letters, you know.
Right. Because I
because
love
he
the
shared.
Zimbabwe people, and I didn't
Yes.
go to Zimbabwe. Like, their pictures are in our home. I love those people.
And just like you would someday
yes,
want to go
I
there
do.
and meet them in
Right.
person.
Right.
That was
How
a
you
fulfillment
felt.
to me, to be able to
Come
meet
back
and feel their culture for myself
and have that
and the children, and
experience.
it's been an impact on our family's life ever since.
When I was thinking about, because you've given a lot of interviews in the release with the connection with the release of the movie, one of the things that I shared with the Grobergs that I really hoped, because of the audience on High Five Live, we have the unique opportunity we can talk about the gospel very openly, and people are okay with that. I was brought to mind that we have a prophet on earth today, President Nelson, who is very much calling us to increase in our faith, in our spirituality, and using the power of the priesthood in our everyday lives. And when you see the movie, you will see the how of that. You will see a young father who is pleading on behalf of his baby son and asking for heaven to be opened. And the priesthood is used in ways that oftentimes I have conversations in the work I do that people aren't knowing what does that look like. Have they dedicated their home? Are they asking for priesthood blessings? Are they calling down the power of heaven? What are your thoughts on that, both of you, on how we can do better about using the power of the priesthood in these last days? Because President Nelson has said it's not going to be enough. If we don't increase, that is the power that's going to enable us to withstand the blows of the adversary. What are your thoughts on that, Elder and Sister Groberg?
Well, I think that you've nailed it right on the head. We have to increase our faith. Now, in those circumstances, there really wasn't another alternative. You know?
Isn't that true?
We're just there with the elements, so to speak. And I don't want to use that as an excuse. I mean, I think we all have to develop
But
our
it
own
creates
faith.
a dependence on God, right?
and-
When the IV doesn't
Right,
go in.
yeah,
Right?
and today we seem to have so many different alternatives, you know, that we kind of. So I think you're spot on, and obviously are, because that's what President Nelson wants. We do need to increase our faith. We do need to increase our prayers, and not only does President Nelson ask us to do that, but he's asked us also to help other people more, even people that aren't members of our church. And I think the Tongan people, to me, represent both of those: strong faith and a willingness
Yes.
to help other people.
Yes.
I mean, again, we don't want to give away the movie, but
Right.
you know, learning
The interfaith message of this
right,
movie
to
is powerful.
pray for others. And it's not just something that is made up. That's really what happened.
And
that
you
was it.
you see the evidence of faith.
Yeah.
You see the power of faith. It's not an ethereal thing. It is a power that you can almost harness. What do you say to a young Elder Groberg that's not certain he has the faith to put his hands on his baby's head and body and bless and command? Or what do you say to a father or a husband right now that is not sure they're worthy of hearing the voice of the Lord talk to them?
Well, I just say you are worthy. The Lord will hear you, but you have to humble yourself and you have to say, "I need help." That's we need help as a church. That's what President Nelson is saying.
Yeah.
And it's there. It's available. You just have to do it. And I think that it's in the doing. It's not in the thinking. It's in the acting. You
It's
just
the
have to-
stepping into the
you-
water
yeah,
of the Red
you have
Sea,
to go.
then it parts.
That's
Yeah.
right.
How about you,
That's
Jean?
it.
What do you feel a wife and a mother can do to access the power of the priesthood? Because oftentimes we call the men the priesthood, and they hold the priesthood. They don't. They're authorized to use it in certain ways, but as women, we have access to that priesthood power as well.
Well, I don't know how I would have made it through life without feeling that support and strength. And we've always dedicated our homes wherever they've been, and we don't have time here, but we could tell stories of how that's been a very real blessing.
You can feel that in the homes that you've lived
Yes,
in.
and other people feel it. We've even had people who we rented our home to while we were
Away.
in Tonga on the mission felt something about living in that home. And
It was dedicated.
uh-huh.
I love that. And as a wife and a mother, as you've watched your children need those blessings and ask for them, I think oftentimes as women, we don't ask. And
That's
part of the way we exercise that priesthood power is we have to ask.
And
We
that
have to
shows
say-
that we
Yes, that we're
have
exercising
faith in
our
that.
faith. And another connection that we have here, and it's in the movie, and I don't think it's gonna ruin too much of it. There's a baby born while you're serving, and you had three children and a baby when you went over. So 4 children.
Actually 5. We
We
had
had four
we had
girls and a baby.
Oh,
at
you had
the beginning. It shows I was expecting our
Expecting.
Number
Okay.
and he
5.
received the
That's
call.
right. That's right.
And
So-
so it was 5 girls.
5 girls under the age of.
The oldest was 7.5, and the youngest was 6 weeks old when we.
Oh
we
my
went to
gosh,
Tonga.
Jean, she is the hero of this story,
She
right?
is. As far
Let's
as I'm
let's be
concerned.
honest.
It was a great adventure.
How many
and
children do you have now?
We have 11.
11 children.
They're all boys, but 9, he says.
And one of those boys, because that's part of the movie, that the
The
queen,
Queen predicted it.
that there would be a
Tongan son.
boy, and there was a Tongan son born, and his name was John. And I don't know if you can see this little picture. Can you see that? In this picture, right here is a cute little missionary, and right here is a cute little missionary. Can you see it? This missionary over here is my husband, and this missionary over here is your John. And that's another connection we have with the Grobergs. My husband and your John were in the MTC together for many weeks, and my husband has dear memories of sharing that time together. But I think one of the things that's so amazing is that your family is your focus, but also in serving in the church, it takes a lot of us away from our families. Would you like to comment on balancing that sacrifice of building the kingdom, but also making sure you're building the kingdom in your own homes? Because I know I hear a lot of people that have children that have left the church and have said that part of that is their resentment, and they struggle with what is asked. And in a very literal sense, you were asked to move your family and go serve God in this other part of the world. And so not all of us are asked that. Sometimes we're just asked to be the nursery leaders or the bishop or the Relief Society president or primary president, and it's a sacrifice. What are your thoughts on balancing that?
Well, my feeling is that if you're truly putting your whole heart into serving the Lord, and you're praying for inspiration of how to do that, He will guide you so that you know what things you need to do to keep your family straight. It's not like this or this.
It's both.
It's both. And I felt that. I remember when I was serving as bishop, I was 27, I guess, when I was called as bishop in Idaho Falls. We had
And the movie does a great depiction of poor Bishop Groberg trying to marriage counsel with an older couple, right?
right. But the children were all just part of it.
Yes.
And I went to daddy-daughter dates, the dancing scene and so forth. I don't know if children all grow up with, even though they're in the same home, they grow up with different attitudes.
Experiences. Yeah.
But I don't believe there's a separation. I think they're together, and I think the thing we have to do is we have to ask the Lord, what should I do in this? Because we'll have challenges with our children. And
Well, Heavenly Father had challenges
Yeah.
with His children, right?
But I just promise you, He'll let you know. He will let you know.
I love that idea, because sometimes the prompting will be, Elder Bednar has shared a story where it was not to get up from a meeting and leave and go watch a basketball game for his son, right?
Yeah.
And and how if we're living the gospel and trying to feel the Spirit direct our lives, sometimes it will be that we say no to this church thing so that it's a family thing, or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Jean,
right.
do you have any thoughts
Well,
on that?
Just thinking back through the years when he was gone so much during his active role in as a 70 and a general authority, often gone for extensive periods of time. But it was amazing how often he would come back having learned something or heard a story from someone's life or whatever that seemed to answer a concern that was going on in our family,
I
or he
love
would come home
that.
with insights.
And I think that
would help
sharing
us.
is important. Sometimes we serve in a calling and we don't share with our spouse or our family what we're experiencing. I know when I'm out speaking, if I hear back, I try to share those letters with my children and my spouse so they see I can't do this mission without them, and they're part of that.
Exactly.
I love that. In the last few minutes, I think one of the other beautiful themes of this movie is the interfaith work that is done, and this coming together that President Nelson just recently met with the Pope, and we've seen evidence of interfaith communities coming together to really help when there's been a tragedy or something like that. I hope that, because I grew up in an area where I could visit my friends' churches and they could come to mine, I had to seek that out more, raising my children in Utah where there was more of a prominent religion. What are your thoughts on what did you learn, and what have you tried to encourage in your own family about that and the power of a Methodist, a Catholic, a Muslim, and a Jew praying and worshiping together?
Well, I've often said that some of the best people, and I've associated with prophets and apostles and good people and really good people, but I can still say without any hesitation that some of those older Methodist ministers in Tonga were as good a people as I've ever met. They were sincere, they were honest. I think sometimes we think that if they aren't members of the church, there's something wrong with them. And not necessarily. I mean, this is, that we have something that we'd like them to understand, but they were so good, and they pray, and I honestly feel that their prayers were a big part of our son's survival. And it's not like a condescending thing to help others. That's what the Lord wants us to do,
right.
And He wants them to help us, and it'll all work out. It doesn't detract at all from the truth. We still have our testimonies, and we still teach, but we let people make their own decisions. That's agency.
Well, what I love about the movie and what you just shared with us is we sometimes assume, well, I feel so strongly about the gospel and its truth that somehow God isn't talking to our neighbor who worships very differently. And that's just not true.
That's
God
right.
loves all of His children, and He is
right.
talking to His children. So when a Methodist minister offers to pray for and with you, what a gift that you can testify of the power of seeing the light of Christ in all people, of all religions. And yes, of course we want to say, can we add to what you have, because we believe in what we have as well. But Jean, do you have any thoughts on how other faiths have increased your faith?
Well, I grew up in Southern California too, and
So you
had
know,
similar-
yes,
and most of my friends in school had other faiths,
right.
And, we were able to share there, and of course our children, when we've lived away, have had those kinds of experiences, and we've had many of their friends in our homes, and when they're there, they join us at night in our family prayers around the big round table, and we've learned from them, and they've shared, and
we always
been
can
very
find
blessing.
a common ground. I was in the Middle East last year touring the Grand Mosque, and the Thai clip that you have now, that symbol was all over the Grand Mosque.
Oh.
And the guide was maybe the version of me, but in a Muslim community, and she's written books, and she speaks, and she takes people on tours, and I was there to speak to a Latter-day Saint community, and our host said, she's kind of the GANEL-LYN of,
Yeah.
right? But it was interesting as she showed us the moss, she says, we keep it very simple, but this symbol and this symbol, and it looked like the Timpanogos and
Yeah.
Bountiful Temple
Yeah.
symbols. And I thought, I wasn't of a position to share with her how much we had in common, but at one point she asked me directly what faith I was. And she says, I don't know a lot about your church, but what I do know is you really care about your God and you care about your family. And I think we have that in common. I said, we have so much more in common, but you're right. And so, and I would say the same about the Zimbabwe people and what my son experienced, that there's so much we can learn from each other. And we really do our own selves a disservice when we make our circle too small.
Right. Well, truth will prevail.
Right.
We don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
What we need
God's
to worry
not
about,
panicked. Yeah.
what we need to worry about is how we're doing, you know.
Right.
And as we do better, we will understand people more, and the light will be brighter in us, and they'll want to know what that light is. So it's not, it is a matter of teaching other people, but it's mostly a matter of being
loving.
better ourselves and shining a brighter light that God has for us to do, and other people wanting to know what that light is. And that's what I feel about the Tongan people, is they have so much faith and so much love that I just feel like I've got to do something to help them.
Yes,
You know.
yes. I think that's a perfect message to end on, that we just need to worry about the light we're sharing and not worry about trying to correct other people or teach that. And the Tongan people, you can feel it from this movie, you can feel it from how you talk about them. And Sister Groberg, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
As we were going through when he wrote the book, the theme of this, radiating the light, kept coming up as the fire of faith, and that's what the title of the book, and the subtitle of the movie is Fire of Faith. And that, I think, says a lot, because
Yes,
can't
the
find
fire
it
of faith
in
and the
this
power of
transport.
faith.
Right. And you can feel it from the Grobergs. They don't just talk about it. They are this, that you live this, and you can feel of their enthusiasm and love of the gospel and love of their fellow man. And I just want to say personally, thank you for strengthening my faith. We read the same stories in the scriptures because those stories are to increase our faith. And I'm grateful that President Monson was able to nag you just a little bit in his beautiful, humorous way, so that we could get a little bit more, to get a window into the life of a mission president and his wife and their family. It strengthened me. I went home after the movie was over and I thought, what am I sacrificing? What am I willing to sacrifice? And how much am I murmuring while I'm doing it? Because Sister Groberg does not murmur enough in the movie. The whole time the friend I was with, I kept looking at her saying, I don't know if I could do it. There's a scene where you throw the baby from the boat. And I thought, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could do it. But we started to name all of our friends that we thought could be Sister Groberg. And I'm grateful for modern day pioneers sitting next to me. Thank you for your time, your patience with the technology, your faith. It is a fire, and it helped my fire get brighter. And thank you for High Five Live and for this opportunity. I feel the spirit of joy being with you both. And
Thank you very much. And she is a woman of faith.
She is a woman of faith. Any woman that is smiling like this after 11 babies, right? There's a power there. But both of you together, God knew what He was doing when He made you eternal companions. That's for sure. And thank you for joining us. Please share this video with those that may need to have their faith increased. Tap into the power of the priesthood. Work on more interfaith relationships in their community, and not be afraid of someone that worships different than them and is trying to balance the life of a family with serving in their church community. I hope those messages have blessed you in some way, and thank you for joining us here today on Women of Worth Wednesday.
Thank you.